Welcome back to Artisan Electrics, where we're back in the Artisan studio. Now, as we have this space, we thought we should really make as much use out of it as possible. So we'll be starting a new set of videos to run alongside the main channel videos called 8 at 8. Around 8 minutes of content posted at 8 PM for some extra evening artisan learning. We posted a similar video in this format around the new amendment, which you can go and watch here. So if you have any suggestions of videos you'd like to see from us, let us know in the comments below. The EVHS Grant, Electric Vehicle Home Charging Scheme. It was created by the government, by OZEV, the Office for Zero Emissions Vehicles, to help people to get an electric car by giving them some money towards the cost of the installation and supply of an electric vehicle charging point. Now, up until now, the grant has been available to homeowners to be able to install a charging point at their house as long as they had dedicated off-street parking and they had a vehicle either on order or already purchased. They could claim £350 towards the cost of that charging point. But that has now changed. From 31st of March, the grant is no longer available to owners of dwellings in general, but there are some exceptions, and there is a new grant which is rolling out, which is available to a new set of people. Who qualifies for the grant now, and what does that mean for us as installers? So as of 1st of April 2022, the grant scheme has changed. Owners of domestic properties no longer qualify for the grant. The grant has been redirected to award landlords, people in rented accommodation, but also owners of flats and apartments. Do you qualify? Well, that is the question. If you're a landlord, you will be able to make up to 200 applications a year to get charging points installed at your rental properties. There's up to 70 grand a year of grant money available for landlords to get up to 200 points installed at their properties. This could benefit landlords a lot because tenants now who've got electric vehicles and they're looking to rent a new property, guess what they're going to be looking for? A property that has a charging point installed. So adding a charging point to your house could be a real way to add value and be more appealing to a wider range of tenants. So landlords, you have grant funding available now. But what if you are a tenant? What can you do? Well, you can request your landlord to get a charging point installed, or you can even do the process yourself and claim the grant as long as you can prove that your landlord does approve for you to install the charging point at the property. Owners of apartment blocks, so these kind of property tycoons who own loads of apartment blocks, they can make up to 30 applications a year and apply for funding of up to £900,000 towards fitting charging points in all of their apartment blocks. How will that grant funding be allocated? Well, up to £850 can be claimed per parking space in an apartment block if you're fitting an actual electric vehicle charging point. If you're not fitting a charging point but you're provisioning a space for a charging point, so fitting an EV ready unit that could be swapped out later for a proper charging point with all the associated cabling and distribution equipment, then you can claim up to £500 per parking space to provision that equipment in your apartment block. If you're eligible, it's very simple. Your installer will do all the hard work for you and you'll just get a discount off the cost of your installation. So say the installation costs £1,000 and you get a £350 grant, you end up paying £650. Obviously it's going to cost a lot more than that, especially if you're installing hundreds of charging points in car parks underground. It can be very complicated to install these kind of systems, but it has to happen at some point, and you've got that grant funding available for the next year. They reckon it's going to probably end in March 2023. So now's the time to start thinking about provisioning your parking spaces in underground car parks, rental properties, getting ready for the EV revolution. If you own your own apartment or flat, the good news is you still qualify for the home charging scheme as long as you've got an electric vehicle or one on order and you've got dedicated parking, whether that be a numbered parking space in your block or a dedicated parking space outside the block. But those installs can be complicated, so it will cost a lot, but at least you'll get some funding towards that. The other funding that's available is for accommodation businesses, essentially. So like small hotels, Airbnbs, etc. Those will qualify for the grant funding too. So definitely interesting for those charging point installations where Airbnbs and hotels are concerned. So what does this mean for us as installers? Well, there's going to be a lot of different work coming through. We've already noticed that the number of home charging installation requests has dropped slightly. I think there was a massive push just before the grant ended. Everyone wanted their charging points installing before the 31st of March, but we've passed that now, and so it's changing slightly. We're still getting a normal amount of EV home charging requests coming through, but they don't qualify for the grant. But we are seeing more and more other types of installations coming through, particularly from people who live in blocks of flats, and also landlords who are approaching us, asking us to install charging points in their rental properties. So it's going to be an interesting shift towards maybe larger installations, maybe multiple charging point installations for places like hotels or blocks of apartments. And if you position yourself right, these could be an interesting opportunity to provide a lot of extra work. They can be complicated installations though. Things like apartment blocks where you've got loads of charging points to be installed, you've got to think about new distribution equipment, potentially new supplies being put in. And that's why the government are offering so much funding towards it, because they realise how expensive it can be in these difficult situations to install the amount of power that you need to run 10, 20, 30 electric vehicle charging points. There are some interesting offerings out there in terms of balancing the loads in order to be able to connect multiple charging points from a fairly standard supply, such as a 3-phase 100 amp supply. If you use the Easy system, which is a very genius Norwegian company who make some smart looking charging points, I'll leave a link up here to the video where I installed one at my house. If you use them, they have a kind of a queuing system, load balancing system where you can install multiple charge points off of one circuit. It will balance the loads between the vehicles or queue the vehicles up in priority order so that you don't have to install thousands of amps of new supply capacity, but you can still charge everyone's vehicles up within a reasonable amount of time. We at Artisan are working on some really interesting installs at the moment where we install the charging points for the customers, and then we manage the charging points for the customers, manage the payments, etc. for them so that they don't have to worry about all the complicated paperwork. So that's my little update about all the changes to the OZEV grant scheme. Let me know in the comments if I've missed anything. What are your thoughts? Are you an EV charging point installer, and have you noticed things starting to shift in terms of the installations that you're being asked to do? And if you are a home owner or a business owner, or if you own a load of apartments and you're wondering how does this affect you, or if you've got any other questions, let us know in the comments. And of course, if you're within the Cambridge area and you'd like us to do your install, feel free to get in touch. So thanks for joining us for 8 at 8, and we'll see you on the next one.